The playoffs are supposed to bring out the best in the game. But for Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, Game 2 against the Las Vegas Aces felt like a battle waged on two fronts, against the defending champions and against the very officials meant to ensure fairness. Clark, bruised and battered, admitted after the game that she felt like she'd been on the floor more than ever this series. Her words weren't excuses. They were the unvarnished truth about a night that saw the Fever robbed of rhythm, robbed of opportunity, and ultimately robbed of victory. From the opening whistle, the contest spiraled into chaos. 41 fouls were called, 16 in a single quarter, chopping the game into pieces so jagged it barely resembled basketball. Every drive ended in a collision. Every cut was met with resistance, and nearly every Fever possession seemed doomed to stall at the sound of a whistle. The Aces were handed a lifeline by referees willing to let the game slip into a wrestling match, and the box score told the sanitized version. A'ja Wilson putting up 25 points, 9 rebounds, 5 steals, 2 blocks. But the reality? The Aces' path to victory was paved by whistles, elbows, and questionable officiating that left Indiana furious heading back home for Game 3. The irony here is that the Fever had already proven they could beat the Aces straight up. Game 1 wasn't close, it was domination. Kelsey Mitchell erupted for 34 points, slicing through the defense with surgical precision. The Fever controlled the tempo, disciplined on both ends, suffocating Wilson into one of her worst shooting nights of the year, just 6 makes on 22 attempts. Indiana didn't just survive in Vegas's fortress. They dismantled the two-time champs on their own floor. That 16-point blowout sent shockwaves through the league. It was a message. The Fever weren't just happy to be here. They were contenders, and Clark's team was ready to take on the Giants. But Game 2 was different. Embarrassed in the opener, the Aces returned desperate. Instead of clean adjustments, they leaned on brute force. The result was a mud fight, masked as playoff intensity. Wilson set moving screens like bowling balls through Indiana's defense, shoved Lexie Hull to the hardwood multiple times, and still drew foul calls against Hull in the process. Peggy Hammond and the Aces manipulated the whistle to their favor. Every small collision rewarded, every Fever attempt at physical play punished. Steph White, Indiana's head coach, summed it up bluntly. It's hard to find rhythm when there's a foul called every 10 seconds. The Fever's identity has been built on pace, spacing, and rhythm. Strip that away, and you don't just slow them down, you shatter their foundation. That was the Aces' strategy, and aided by the whistle, it worked. Indiana stumbled into broken half-court sets, forced to grind possessions against a defense allowed to play with its hands, shoulders, and forearms. No one felt that more than Lexie Hull. Coming into the game with a sore back, she could have sat. But instead, she strapped up and fought, only to become Vegas's target. Every time she cut, she was grabbed, shoved, or hit. Yet somehow, Hell answered with defiance, drilling 5 three-pointers to tie a Fever playoff record. It was a performance defined not by comfort, but by pain and persistence. She admitted afterward that the soreness was constant, but she kept pushing through. That's the essence of playoff grit, not perfection, but defiance. Meanwhile, Aaliyah Boston was waging her own war inside. Her double-double 10 points and 13 rebounds looked steady on paper, but every number came at the cost of bruises and no calls. Wilson and Vegas hammered her on every possession, turning the paint into a battlefield. She didn't get the whistle she deserved, but she didn't fold. She kept grabbing boards, kept contesting, kept absorbing the punishment. Survival became her stat line. And that's what makes it impressive. And then there was Odyssey Sims. With Mitchell smothered held to just 13 points after her Game 1 explosion, Sims shouldered more of the offense, fighting through double teams and physicality to drop 18 points. But every time Indiana gained momentum, a whistle stopped play. Every spark was snuffed out before it could catch fire. The Fever weren't outplayed. They were handcuffed. The narrative that emerged after Game 2 painted Wilson as the hero. But fans weren't fooled. They saw the moving screens, the shoves, the unchecked physicality masquerading as toughness. They saw Mitchell denied freedom of movement at every turn, face-guarded, bumped, and denied daylight. They saw Boston mauled in the post while Wilson collected calls on minimal contact, They saw Hull crash to the floor again and again, only to be the one whistled for fouls. This wasn't about brilliance. It was about desperation disguised as dominance. Even Becky Hammond, the Aces coach, admitted she didn't love how physical the game became, despite her team benefiting from it. That admission says it all. If the winning coach feels the game was out of control, then what are we really watching? Is this playoff basketball, or is it chaos with referees complicit in its execution? But here's where the tide turns. Game 3 isn't in Vegas. It's in Indianapolis. And Gainbridge Fieldhouse isn't just a home court. It's an amplifier. Every whistle, every shove, every missed call will be met with a roar too loud to ignore. 17,000 Fever fans furious about Game 2 will transform into a force of nature. Officiating bias thrives in silence. It shrinks under noise. That's the advantage Indiana now carries. Hull already proved she won't quit. Boston has shown she'll keep battling no matter the abuse. Sims gave Indiana a second scoring punch when Mitchell was neutralized. And Mitchell herself. You don't hold a star of her caliber down 2 games in a row. After being denied rhythm in Vegas, she now steps onto her home floor with the crowd chanting her name, hungry to erupt. That's a recipe for fireworks. History backs Indiana too. Teams that win Game 1 in a best-of-5 tilt the math in their favor. The Fever didn't just win Game 1, they embarrassed Vegas. That confidence doesn't vanish after one whistle-heavy loss. It transforms into resolve, sharpened by anger and fueled by the roar of home fans. Game 3 is more than just the midpoint of the series. It's the pivot point. Vegas needed whistles and brute force to survive Game 2. But now the Fever return to their house, their fans, their energy. They aren't coming home to survive. They're coming home to put the Aces on the ropes. Because if Game 1 showed Indiana's talent and Game 2 exposed Vegas's desperation, then Game 3 will reveal the truth. This isn't just a semifinal series, it's a battle for legitimacy. And the Fever, bruised but unbroken, are ready to fight back with everything they have. If you believe the Fever can flip this series, drop a "Let's Go Fever" in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss an update. The story isn't over, it's just getting started.